Welcome to Your 30 and 60, where we bring you the latest news from a secular humanist perspective. Insightful, rational, and to the point. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your 30 and 60, which is a news show that compiles the top news, national, global, and religious stories from the last 30 days. Now, before we get into the show, I want to encourage everyone to like and share this video on your various social media platforms. Also, subscribe to our channel, Skeptic Haven, and also hit the bell for notifications every time we go live or upload a video. And if you like our content, please think about and share. There are super chats. Super chats are going to be read at the end of each show. And if you like our content on our channel, because we got several different shows, please become a patron. You can go to www.patreon.com/Skeptic Haven and give a little or give a lot. We prefer you to give a lot. But if you can just give something, that would be great. Welcome, everybody that's coming to the chat. I see you, Jesus Tales. I see you, Philip. We can see other people that's coming in soon. But without further ado, let me go ahead and welcome to my co-hostess for the mostest. No, my co-hostess with the mostest, Ember! Ember, you're so little. Come be even with me. There we go.
I need a Mario mushroom to get big. Yeah.
I know, like boop, 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 boop. We got you.
It's how I fit all the way in the back. It's living in the closet all those years. That's what
oh my goodness. Well, you are out of the closet now, babe. How about that?
That's right.
We're if it's not going to get us demonetized, I'll make sure to bring shrooms for our next broadcast.
Ooh.
Okay. Well, Ember, I'm so glad that you are back, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I so appreciate you. And are you ready to get into today's stories?
Oh, for sure. We've got so much to cover.
Right, we got so much to cover in very little time, so let's get to it. So now, for national news. Okay, this story is from CNN. John Kelly, former White House chief of staff for Donald Trump, recently called the ex-president a fascist and criticized his admiration for authoritarianism. Speaking with the New York Times and The Atlantic, Kelly claimed Trump often praised the loyalty showed by Hitler's generals and wished his own military leaders would exhibit similar deference. Trump allegedly said he needed generals who would follow orders without question, a view Kelly said reflects Trump's dictator approach to leadership. Kelly also confirmed prior to reports that Trump spoke favorably of Hitler, commenting that Hitler did some good things. He did some good things, guys, with Trump reportedly pointing to economic achievements while overlooking the atrocities committed under Hitler's regime. This pattern of admiration for authoritarian figures, Kelly argues, highlights Trump's disregard for constitutional checks on power and underscores concerns about how he might act if reelected. The Trump campaign has denied allegations, calling them debunked stories and fabrication. However, Kelly's revelations, along with similar testimonies from other Trump aides, fuel ongoing discussions about the former president's views on power, loyalty, and the role of military in a democratic society. We got more on this particular story. So, Ember, if you would go ahead and introduce the next one, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, there's more to this story.
Yes.
The follow-up comes from Al Jazeera.
Right.
13 former Trump administration officials have voiced their support for former Chief of Staff John Kelly after his recent warnings that former President Donald Trump has shown authoritarian tendencies and disregard for democratic principles. In a letter first reported by Politico, the officials, all former Trump aides, applauded Kelly's statements, writing, quote, "There are moments in history where it becomes necessary to put country over party. This is one of those moments." Urging people to heed Kelly's warning, they emphasized the risks of a potential second Trump term. Kelly, Trump's longest-serving chief of staff and a retired Marine general, told the New York Times that Trump displayed a, quote, dictator approach during his presidency, frequently scorning constitutional limits and threatening to use the military against political opponents. Kelly also revealed that Trump often praised Hitler, which Kelly saw as a sign of the former president's admiration for authoritarian leaders. Trump's campaign denounced Kelly's statements, calling him a degenerate and a lowlife, because that's the best way to beat back somebody's arguments is insults. We love it. Among the officials backing Kelly are former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci, former Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Elizabeth Newman, and former Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham. They noted that having worked closely with Trump, they were sadly not surprised by Kelly's claims. Growing criticism within Trump's own party, including warnings from former Vice President Dick Cheney, has highlighted the concerns. And when Cheney calls you out, Cheney called Trump, quote, the greatest threat to our republic, a sentiment Vice President Kamala Harris echoed, warning that a second Trump term would lack officials like Kelly to rein in his actions. With less than 2 weeks until November 5th and the election, Trump and Harris remain virtually tied in national polls, intensifying scrutiny over Trump's leadership and the concerns raised by those who once served him.
Indeed. Well, speaking of Kamala Harris, if we can go back to the next story, this is actually from The Guardian. So Vice President Kamala Harris has sharply criticized Donald Trump, describing him as fascist and a threat to democratic values after new claims emerged that he admired Hitler and sought loyalty to himself over the Constitution. The accusations came from Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, as stated before, who reported that Trump lamented not having generals as devoted to him as those serving Hitler in Nazi Germany. In a speech Wednesday, Harris stated that Trump's remarks reveal his desire for unchecked power and a personal military force, a stark reminder of what's at stake as the election approaches. Harris emphasized that Trump's quest for loyalty is directed toward him alone, disregarding constitutional values, and added that in a second term, former officials like Kelly would not be there to moderate his actions. The White House backed her comments, with Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre confirming President Biden's agreement with Harris on Trump's leanings, noting Trump's stated intentions to rule as a dictator on day one if re-elected. Oh my goodness. Ember, what can we say? There is some issues that's going on with the former president, if I do say.
There always have been, but it's not just him either. This whole group of people, a cabal, you might say, around him, are building up this movement, sometimes not entirely legally. It's astounding.
Goodness. Well, I think you got another story actually that's talking about the cabal. Another person that's in the cabal. You want to talk about it?
For sure.
Well,
so,
go ahead.
as most people are aware by now, Elon Musk, self-proclaimed billion gajillionaire, has thrown his hat in very solidly with the Red Hat Brigade. And he's been getting into trouble for attempting to potentially, allegedly, buy the election. So, despite warnings from the Department of Justice, Elon Musk continues to try to buy the election. Earlier this year, Musk set up the super PAC that he named America PAC. Last Thursday, that organization announced on Musk's social media app that it had given $1 million to men in Wisconsin and in Michigan. The scheme is thus: According to the America PAC website, they're giving $1 million prizes to swing state voters who sign a petition promising they'll vote to defend the First and Second Amendments. To be eligible, one must be registered to vote in one of the critical swing states, and one must promise to vote for Trump. While the prizes are awarded by lottery, the fairness of which is questionable, the Department of Justice warned Musk early last week that this tactic looks a lot like trying to buy votes and, quote, may be illegal. The warning seems to have given the Political Action Committee pause, but not for long. They skipped the daily giveaway on Wednesday, but resumed on Thursday, awarding 2 prizes to make up for the missed day. The basis for the warning comes from federal election law, U.S. Code 52, Section 10307 specifically, which states, quote, anyone who pays or offers to pay or accepts payment either for registration to vote or for voting could face up to a $10,000 fine and 5-year prison sentence. While Musk denies any wrongdoing, asserting, quote, the winner can be from any political party, the fact the contest was announced at a Trump rally and is carried out exclusively on platforms controlled by Musk seems to be a deliberate tactic to limit who can participate beyond the limits of legality. Or, to put it another way, a means to manipulate potential Trump voters into voting, if not swaying undecided voters to swing Trump's way. After all, that team is so successful, so rich, they're handing out fortunes. If we vote for them, we'll all be so wealthy. Or something. To date, Musk has pumped more than $118 million into the Political Action Committee, over $30 million into political ads, and is under investigation for covert communications with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, who, among other things, directed the Russian state to use cyber warfare to interfere in the U.S. elections in 2016 and 2020 on Trump's behalf. Perhaps he hopes that he can buy Trump a win, and thus any crimes he committed along the way will be forgiven. So, what do you think about that, Cynthia?
I see a running theme here.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming from this particular campaign. I see a lot of repetition from 2020, unfortunately. And I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. I got this smile on my face, Ember, but it's like masking fear. It's basically what's happening.
I relate.
Okay, cool. I'm glad that I'm not the only one. And you too, if you're smiling through your fear, we see you. We definitely see you. So yeah, that those stories are just very basically rich, and they just kind of, just show where this particular campaign is going very much so into authoritarianism, and I don't and I don't necessarily see how other people can't see that.
I think they do see it. I think to them that's a feature, not a bug. And part of the reason may be that despite having nothing but the concept of a plan for the longest time, Trump finally has started to put some solid policy proposals forward. And you've got some stories on that for us, which I'm going to need a drink.
Yeah, so go ahead and pour yourself some wine or a cocktail or just straight up vodka, because I got some stories for you guys. I've got stories for you guys. You ready? Here we go.
Buckle up, folks.
Amen. This story is from the Griot. Former President Donald Trump recently appeared on Fox News, because that's what he does, making controversial statements about U.S. education, particularly around history curricula addressing slavery. Trump asserted he would withhold federal funding from schools that teach American history as being built on slavery in indigenous land, even proposing to shut down the Department of Education entirely. The remarks came as he discussed hypothetical scenarios where schools might prioritize curricula highlighting slavery's role in America's foundation, to which Trump responded, quote, "We don't send them money. We would save half our budget." This stance aligns with Project 2025, a conservative initiative to limit federal involvement in education despite Trump's denial of direct ties to the project. Project 2025's emphasis on states' rights reflects a rhetoric often used to resist federal civil rights efforts. Critics argue that shutting down the Department of Education would most harm students from historically marginalized communities, particularly Black and Brown students, as federal oversight would diminish. Trump's remarks also echo his opposition rather, to DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, which he has previously called anti-white. With the Department of Education overseeing education for 50 million students across over 18,000 school districts, Trump's proposals signal a profound shift in the federal role in education and how the U.S. might be taught. This other story is actually from the Griot as well, where Trump slammed a mentally unfit after saying Black voters should get their heads examined. Yeah, let's do that. All you Black voters out there, meet me at the shrink's office. In a recent rally in Atlanta, Georgia, former President Donald Trump stirred controversy by suggesting that Black and Hispanic voters who support Kamala Harris gotta have their heads examined, a remark that drew laughter from the crowd. Trump's comments quickly sparked backlash from the Black community leaders who called his statements dismissive and offensive. Marcus Batchelor, national political director at People for the American Way, responded sharply, remarking that Trump sees Black and Hispanic voters as groups to pander to rather than actively engaging with their community concerns. NAACP President Derek Johnson echoed this sentiment, saying Trump's remarks display a lack of respect for these communities and questioned Trump's mental fitness for office. Johnson also referenced Trump's recent behavior at a Pennsylvania rally where the former president stood swaying to music for nearly 40 minutes. Rather than engaging with voters, he expressed concern that Trump may not possess the stability needed to represent the nation effectively. The Harris campaign joined the response, challenging Trump to release his medical records if he feels he has a mental capacity for another term in office. They also encouraged him to engage directly with Black media, noting that Vice President Harris has prioritized connecting with a diverse audience. As Election Day nears, the divide between the two campaigns is deepening, with Trump's rhetoric sparking even more discussion on his approach to minority voters. And I want to go ahead and go to the next story, which is entitled "The Griot's Keith Gaynor Joins CNN to Break Down What's Really Going On with Harris and Black Men." So this story again is from the Griot. Garen Keith Gaynor, managing editor of politics at the Griot, recently spoke on CNN about a trend in younger Black men showing increased support for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Drawing on an NAACP survey, he noted that nearly a quarter of Black men under 50 reported leaning towards Donald Trump, often due to misinformation spread through social media. Gaynor explained that while millennial Black men grew up seeing Obama's presidency as an inspiration, they now frequently turn to social media platforms for news, making them more vulnerable to distorted information. To counter this, Gaynor highlighted the critical role of journalists in portraying a comprehensive view of both candidates so Black voters can make informed choices. The generation divide reveals a potential challenge for Harris, who recently presented her opportunity agenda for Black men. This proposal offers up to $1 million forgivable loans for Black entrepreneurs and expanded job training programs aiming to address economic gaps. Trump, on the other hand, has not introduced a policy agenda specifically directed at Black men. Reflecting on Gaynor's points, the situation raises pressing questions about the influence of social media on voting patterns and the responsibility of media to counter misinformation. Ember, I am curious, what are your thoughts?
Well, this man, my goodness. I mean, okay, so I think the most pressing thing is the way, as we saw with the Kelly story, how he responded to Kelly's accusations by simply calling him a lowlife, is that he doesn't have anything to say. All he can do is insult people, whether it's calling someone he hand selected for a job, a very important job at the White House, who he then, calls names to, oh, I'm unfit. No, you're unfit. Or saying that an entire group of people need to get their heads examined. He's got nothing to offer except insults, which shows not only how vacuous, but how antagonistic this guy is. But that's not exactly news. We've known he's like this since 2016. It's mind-blowing we're even in this position.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how, one of the things that, even though, I understand, okay, really, this is what's happening right now? Okay, that's fine. Hi, everybody. Say hello to my babe.
Special guests.
Babe. Special guests. My baby. Say hi, babe. Okay. Can you go with your auntie right now so I can go ahead and finish my broadcast? We can hold hands later. I love you. Okay. I'll see you later, honey. Okay. Then that's how we do that. We're live, guys.
Live broadcasting.
This is how live broadcasting works. You dig? Okay. Did you get your alphabet blankie? Yeah, you got it? Cool. Yeah, I know, right? It's great. The dog came in here too. It's wonderful. That's how we do this stuff right here. Okay. All because you actually get live antics at my house, guys. All the more to become a patron so that you can see more of these antics going forward. But
that's right. Get some behind the scenes stuff.
There you go, live, because that's how we do it here. Man, yeah. Let me tell you something. It's kind of interesting to me that Trump, even though we know that he has been documented to tell 20 to 31,000 lies during his presidency. Even though he'll lie, he'll also say the quiet part out loud. Mm-hmm. And he is pretty much who we know who he is. He is he's always been this business person that's taking his business personality into the presidency, which means my way or the highway. And that people will implore fascist tendencies. Just saying.
Oh yeah, it goes so much deeper than that. But we don't have time to psychoanalyze the former felon today.
No,
but
we don't.
The good news is that not everyone involved in politics is completely refusing to accept responsibility for anything. I think that's your next story touches on a little accountability in administration, I believe.
It does. And just to drop as a little bit nugget, if you guys are interested in some of the psychoanalyzing that we can come up with, tune into Women Atheists Unload next Saturday, where we actually do a reaction to Trump 2024. It's going to be a doozy.
Mm-hmm. We've got notes.
We got notes, guys. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go into this next story. This is from CBS News. In Arizona, President Biden issued a historic formal apology to Native American communities for the atrocities committed through federal Indian border schools, a dark chapter in U.S. history that spanned over 150 years. This apology, delivered at I believe that's the Gila River Indian community, acknowledged the forced assimilation, cultural erasure, and severe abuse inflicted on Indigenous children. Biden recognized the impact on generations of Native Americans, calling the practice a sin on our soul. While Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, the first Native American cabinet member, shared personal ties to the border school system, Haaland, whose family members were taken to these schools, emphasized that the trauma from these policies affects every Indigenous person she knows, survivors and descendants alike. Haaland's recent investigation, the first federal probe into this era, revealed the deaths of over 500 Indigenous children across the federal Indian border schools, with both marked and unmarked burial sites discovered. Schools often partnered with religious institutions to strip children of their identities, and languages, punishing those who resisted. Despite the abuses, Haaland said Native communities preserved, and her administration is committed to ensuring this history is neither hidden nor forgotten. Ember, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's really nice to see some actual accountability on this. I mean, this has been an ongoing issue that just seems to keep getting swept under the rug, and it's one of the most horrible things. Like, the topic of genocide seems to come up an awful lot these last few years, and here is an instance, or at least a part of, an actual genocide that took place right here in the United States as well as Canada.
Correct.
And even getting this much out of the federal government has been like pulling teeth for decades. So it's nice to see some progress. My goodness.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I think that an apology for any of these atrocities is a first step, and I'm glad that this administration actually, acknowledged the atrocities and also the trauma and the blight that is on the American historic event horizon when it comes to what the United States has done specifically to indigenous people in this country. Kind of even going back to the story that we covered earlier about Trump saying that he would defund schools that talked about speaking about, slavery being, what basically got America's economic start, and building a country on stolen land that, you committed, mass murder or genocide in order for you to do. And, this is things that America has to, actually reckon with. And it's just unfortunate that we do have people who want to actually ask or demand or steal, I didn't say that, your vote, in order for them to come into power and just completely, like, as you said before, sweep this under the rug. So and even though I have to give the Biden administration kudos for this first step.
It is a plus. It's unfortunate that people like to paint these as polar opposites, where on the one side we've got no teaching our actual history, and on this side there's an apology. But that's not even really the case. Like, we've got a far extreme of denying all evil, and then we've got a reasonable middle ground. There is no other side. It only looks like it because we only have two options. What we really need, as this show was originally titled to, and it shows in relation to the other stories we've covered, is reparations, which doesn't necessarily have to be financial. Reparations is just, the word repair is part of it.
Yeah, but but finances is important. That we need the money, but it's the money plus, right? It's the money plus. It's the money plus acknowledgement. It's actually, and as you pointed out too, when we're talking about repair means that everything that you broke because you harmed this particular group of people because of what you've done needs to be addressed.
Ideally,
ideally, it needs to be addressed.
But at least something is it's better. There's such a long way to go. And if we have to take it one piece at a time, then that's what we'll do. But all of us need to stay on this. Right.
Exactly. And when we are talking about, the atrocities that have happened to people, when we're talking about, African Americans, we're talking about Native people, even when we're talking about, what has been said and done to, people who have immigrated into this country, these things also have to be addressed. And we should be more so on the side that we can be more expansive with our thought and even how we are dealing with people going forward. That's my hope for this nation. So let's talk about global news.
Yay! I'm sure the stories can't possibly be any more infuriating or depressing than what. No, that couldn't be. Nope.
Okay, everybody. Okay, just a fair warning: if you vape, go ahead, and if you need a shot of something, go ahead and get it now. Okay, let's get into the global news, shall we? This story is from CNN. Israel conducts targeted strikes within Iran, reportedly in response to an unprecedented missile barrage from Iran earlier in the month. Israel aimed at military sites like missile manufacturing and aerial defense systems, sidestepping crucial energy infrastructures such as oil fields and nuclear assets. Iran confirmed the attacks but downplayed their impact, reporting limited damage and successful interception in some areas. 2 Iranian soldiers were reported dead, while Israeli leaders asserted that the strikes delivered with a severe blow to Iran's defense capabilities. The conflict comes amid broader military actions, with Israel recently ramping up its offensives against Iran-backed groups across the region, particularly in Lebanon, where Hezbollah leaders were killed in an Israeli attack. These developments, or rather airstrike, these developments risk escalating into full-scale war, with the United States, Israel's allies, cautioning restraint, particularly regarding the critical targets that could destabilize regional economies. While Israel's focus on military rather than economic targets may lead a path open for de-escalation, the cycle of retaliation and counterattacks threatens to destabilizing the border region further. And we can go into our next story from the AP News. While an Israeli airstrike in southeast Lebanon, early Friday killed 3 journalists while they slept at a media guest house, marking one of the deadliest attacks on press since hostilities began a year ago. The strike carried out over around 3 a.m., targeting chalets rented by media outlets covering the war, leaving behind overturned vehicles marked press and a damaged satellite dish. The Israeli military claimed the strike aimed at Hezbollah infrastructure and did not issue a prior warning. However, human rights groups condemned the attack, arguing that deliberately targeting journalists violates international humanitarian law. Lebanese officials characterized it as a premeditated assassination, noting 18 journalists were present at the site. This incident adds to a troubling trend, with at least 128 journalists killed in Israeli operations in Gaza and Lebanon over the past year, the highest toll since the Committee to Protect Journalists began tracking fatalities in 1992. It underscores the urgent need for protections for civilians, especially those documenting air-armed conflicts, and also on the ground. Ember, what are your thoughts?
There's a lot. So Israel seems bound and determined to escalate this war into a region-wide conflict.
Yeah.
And while there's justification, rationalization, you might say, it's not great. It's pretty troubling. I mean, these stories are just the tip of the iceberg. We've all seen or at least heard about the thousands of dead children in Gaza. There have been strikes into Yemen and other locations. There's TikToks of journalists running from snipers who are shooting at the journalist.
Yeah.
Who then get shot live on TikTok.
Yeah.
What the fuck are they doing?
Not to mention even some of the TikToks of IDF soldiers actually, praising themselves when they are killing civilians. And I just find it just like so ironic that even though like we're calling this whole thing that Israel is doing, well, the Israel government is doing, I'm not going to blame this all on Israel itself, that, this is like a strike back to protect itself because of October 7th. I just find it just like so egregious that we're looking at a death toll of over 90% when it comes to civilians. These people are not Hamas, they're not Hezbollah, they're not Houthis, they're not even the Iranian government. And I can't, and I'm just forced to just ask this question: where's the line? Where's the line? When is there enough is enough? When do we actually step in and say, you're done? You're done. No more babies killed. No more innocent people killed. No more starving people. no more keeping fuel and electricity from actually being in a certain area, no more open air prison, no more apartheid. Let humanitarian actions and humanism reign instead of authoritarianism, dictatorships, and also just outright murder.
Yeah, we really have to ask, what is the goal?
Yeah,
Like, the excuse has been Israel has to defend itself, but is that what's happening? It seems to have gone well beyond the scope of that. I
yeah,
mean, Gaza alone, that is ethnic cleansing.
it
I
is.
mean, you can't bomb the hospitals. You
Yeah,
can't bomb the locations where the press are. And they didn't even say, oops, we missed a different target.
right,
They said we were intending to strike there because there might have been Hezbollah there.
right,
It's beyond belief. And so you have to wonder, where's the line? What is the goal? Is it the annihilation of every Palestinian in the West Bank? Is it the conquest of the entire region? What is the goal? And will the United States support that? Or at
right,
least tacitly allow it to happen?
right, exactly. And that's and quiet as it's kept, people, that's on the ballot come November the 5th. I guess we can go into our next story now.
Oh, what other goodies do we have in store?
Oh boy, let me tell you. Well, at least we're moving away from Gaza right now. Okay, so we're moving away from the Middle East and we're going into actually the Philippines. So this story actually comes from CBS News. Tropical storm Chami has caused widespread devastation in the Philippines, leaving nearly 130 dead and many missing due to severe flooding and landslides. President Ferdinand Marcos reported that at least 85 people have been confirmed dead, with 41 still unaccounted for. As rescue efforts continue, isolated areas remain in desperate need of assistance. Rescue workers in Tallahassee, Batangas province have been searching for survivors and recovering bodies from the mud and debris. The storm overwhelmed flood control systems, delivering up to 2 months' worth of rainfall in just 24 hours. Marcos acknowledged the unprecedented rainfall and announced plans for a major flood control project to address climate change challenges. Over 5 million people were impacted by the storm, with many taking refuge in emergency shelters. The government has closed schools and offices, and inter-island ferry services were suspended. Weather conditions have improved, enabling cleanup operations to begin in several affected areas. The Philippines is prone to about 20 storms annually, with Chami being the 11th this year. The region remains vulnerable, having faced devastating storms in the past, including Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, which claimed over 7,300 lives. Ember, climate change is not real.
I mean,
It's a
it's
hoax,
we
right?
can tell. Sure. I'm space lasers. Why not? I mean, at this
Pew, pew,
point,
pew. Right.
we're literally burying our heads in the sand, which is not the best place to be with sea level actively rising.
Right.
I don't understand. I don't understand people. I don't understand why some people are this way. It just
Boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's this very, I don't know, it's just very sad that, again, and it's not just like Trump. We have other people in leadership that are denying that climate change is actually a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're seeing escalated hurricanes and tropical storms and floods and all the like to actually show how this devastation is being caused by climate change, which is something that we as human beings have done to this earth, we as human beings need to fix it. And, it's less about littering and it's more about the industrial complexes and how we actually created our economies now that's driving this. So, that's on the ballot too, people. Just by the by, just saying. But as we are going forward, Ember, I think that you have a nicer story to give to us.
It's you may say more colorful, perhaps.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
It is weather related, however. Yeah. Space weather, to be precise. As you may be aware, we've had a banner year for auroras. Now, the northern and southern lights are normally considered a once-in-a-lifetime event for those of us who live far outside of the Arctic circles. But this year, we've had frequent auroras reaching out to cover most of the US, Europe, into China, across Australia and southern Africa. So, what causes these auroras, and why is this year so fantastical? Well, we can get into that a little bit to keep things relatively brief. We've seen beautiful colors all over the world, all over all of social media. People are sharing their phone photos of the auroras. So we know we're at the high point of the solar cycle. And in fact, there's a longer solar cycle that also lines up this year. So we're seeing lots of extra activity. That's why there have been so many mass ejections from the sun this whole summer, going back into May. What causes the colors is when those mass ejections pass Earth, ionized charged particles are directed by Earth's magnetic field into the polar regions. But the more there is, the further from the poles they reach. So we're getting a whole lot of ionization in the upper atmosphere. And the colors can actually tell us how high up that radiation is penetrating. When you get the pink that we've been seeing a lot of, that's an interaction with oxygen at very high altitudes, 150 miles up or more. That's well into what we would consider space. The normal line for space is considered 62, 63 miles. When it turns green, that's excited oxygen at a lower level. That's mostly what we see as green from like the pictures from Iceland and Norway. And that is between 60 and 150 miles up. So that's still pretty solidly right on the edge of space. But they can come lower, deeper into the atmosphere. At above 60 miles, you start to get this purpleness that we've been seeing in a lot of pictures from this year. Weird purple ethereal glows. And that's from ionized molecular nitrogen. When the ionized material reaches so deep, it starts to hit the atmosphere, which is mostly nitrogen. Now we get brighter colors. We get these higher energy colors than we had been getting when it was just the extra atmospheric oxygens. And if it turns to this light blue, that's happening because the atmosphere becomes so dense. That's less than 60 miles. That's it. Anything less than 60 miles, it could conceivably go all the way to the ground, which is why we worry about the power grid and such.
Yeah.
But that's what that lighter pale blue color is. So all of these different interactions, it's the same energy from these solar flares, these mass ejections. It's just interacting with different stuff at different altitudes. And that's kind of fascinating, I think.
I think that's fascinating as well. You know, unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch much aurora activity here in Illinois, especially like in the part that I'm in, because, you know, all of the, I would say like the light pollution that we get from here. But I do think it's just kind of cool. And, you know, a cool thing that could happen as well if you guys happen to be, you know, something, you know, happen to be like in an area like mine that has a lot of light pollution. So you're not going to be able to check out the Aurora Borealis. Sky shows. That's why I love the planetarium. Just saying.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Guess what? If you're an Illinois resident, on Wednesdays, you can get into the planetarium for free. Just saying. All right. Are we ready to talk about this weekend and Christian ministers saying and doing shit?
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah,
okay.
we do have to move along, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Let's talk about Lance Wallnau. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so this story is actually from RightWing Watch, the Newsweek. In a recent former roundtable discussion at the Latino Summit in Doral, Florida, former President Donald Trump engaged with attendees, including MAGA pastor Lance Wallnau, a prominent figure in the pro-Trump evangelical movement. Wano dismissed concerns from leaders about the repercussions of a Trump loss, suggesting that unrest could follow a Trump victory, similar to the riots linked to the Black Lives Matter movement and after George Floyd's death. Republicans, quote, Republicans, conservatives are not funding riots. I feel like I should do it in his voice. Republican conservatives are not funding riots, he said. In spite of January 6th insurrection fiction that was sold to you, Republicans and conservatives aren't really the riot crowd. The left is. If Trump wins, boom, there will be instantaneous manifestations of demons all over the country. He characterized the January 6th Capitol riot as fiction, echoing claims from some within the MAGA circle that downplayed severity. While known for equating Trump to the biblical figure Cyrus, continues to blend religious messaging with political advocacy through the Seven Mountains Mandate, which urges Christians to dominate key societal sectors. So let's move on to another pastor saying some shit, shall we? This story is from the Friendly Atheist. Well, actually, he didn't actually say shit. Well, he did say shit, but he's doing shit now. So Zach Radcliffe, a 29-year-old worship leader at Oakwood Church in Michigan and a graduate of Liberty University, good grief, has been arrested for multiple charges relating to sexual abuse, including producing illicit content involving minors dating back to 2014. He faces up to 25 years in prison and is being held on a $3 million bond with a court appearance scheduled for October 31st. Following the allegations, Oakwood Church suspended Radcliffe with pay on October 3rd and ultimately terminated his employment on October the 12th. The church has expressed shock and concern for the victims, noting that they are unaware of the full extent of his actions until recently. The situation is particularly troubling given Radcliffe's previous public persona, including performing at CPAC in 2019 and participating in church events where he promoted conservative values. The church senior pastor, Frank Radcliffe, previously preached against illiberal ideas, but notably did not address the allegations against his son during sermons. This dissonance raises questions about accountability within the church, especially as it positioned itself against issues like gender identity, while allegedly harboring a predator in its ranks. This case underscores the disturbing trend of trusted figures in religious institutions being shielded from scrutiny, allowing abusive behaviors to persist unchecked. And let's talk about another minister saying and doing shit. This story is from Mary Sue. Joel Webbin, president of Rights Response Ministries, has sparked outrage with his recent sermon in which he called for the public execution of women associated with the hashtag MeToo movement. This disturbing proclamation aligns with the history of controversial remarks, including advocating for the repeal of the 19th Amendment and expressing disdain for democracy because it grants women the right to vote. In his sermon, Webbin dismissed the hashtag MeToo movement as false accusing and suggested that executing women who speak out against sexual assault would be the solution. This rhetoric reflects a broader trend of hostility towards women asserting their right in the face of male abuse. Webbin's comments not only dehumanize victims, but also promote a dangerous narrative that overlooks the actual predators of violence. He called for accountability for men who commit sexual assault. I'm sorry, he did not call for that. He failed to call for that. He failed, people, to call for accountability for men who commit sexual assault while targeting the victims instead. This alarming stance highlights the need for greater awareness and action against the toxic misogyny present within certain segments of religious and political communities, where women who dare to share their experiences are vilified rather than supported. What say you, Ember?
Sadly, not surprising. There's Auroras.
Thank goodness for Auroras.
Oh my goodness! Thank goodness an election is coming up. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
going to put a stop to this kind of nonsense, but at least we might see not just at the federal level, but at state level, officials starting to take some action to head off and block this kind of nonsense, to actually, enforce the laws against crimes. I don't know.
Wow, such a concept. Well,
It's so wild.
I got another story that I think that's a little bit better, concerning, an apologist saying and doing shit. You ready for it?
Sure.
Okay. Well, this story is also from the Friendly Atheist. During a graduation ceremony at Australian Catholic University, a union leader, Joe De Bruyn, who received an honorary doctorate, sparked outrage with a speech condemning abortion, same sex marriage, and IVF. His comments prompted a mass walkout by graduates, many of whom found his remarks offensive. De Bruyn insisted that he had informed the university of his speech content in advance, arguing that discussions on such topics shouldn't be silenced. However, ACU faced criticism for honoring him, with students groups condemning the speech for overshadowing the celebration of students' achievements and creating a harmful environment. In the aftermath, students planned protests against the university's decision, highlighting their disappointment in ACU's support for divisive rhetoric that contradicts the inclusive values they expect. Man, Amber, when you been like, happy to actually be part of that walkout?
It it would be an adventure, I suppose.
I
It's
would
just
say, I would say so, but we got other stuff that we got to get to for this particular adventure, and I got another story concerning, something that wasn't all that great, but I think it's a little bit of reciprocity. This story is actually from NPR. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles has agreed to pay $880 million to victims of clergy sexual abuse, marking what attorneys describe as the largest single child sex abuse settlement with Catholic archdiocese. Archbishop Jose H. Gomez expressed remorse, stating, "I am sorry for every one of these incidents and hoped for settlement would aid in healing for the victims." The agreement comes after months of negotiations on behalf of 1,353 individuals alleging abuse by local priests, concluding the 25-year litigation process. The plaintiffs will independently allocate the settlement among amounts which add to the 740 million previous paid by the archdiocese for settlements, bringing the total of over 1.5 billion. Attorney Morgan Stewart highlighted the urgency of the settlement, noting many survivors are aging and or have died, emphasizing that it was time for resolution. The settlement will be financed through the Archdiocese investments, reserves, bank loans, and contributions for the certain religious orders involved in the litigation. Ember, I am very, saddened by what has happened to a lot of the people that have been, abused. But, you know, I'm glad that the Catholic Church is paying out the ass.
it's a start. It
Yeah.
doesn't make what happened right, and it doesn't stop it from continuing to happen. Why are people still Catholics? But at least it's something.
Yeah. And I think that if anything that we can actually say about today's broadcast is that, at least we are reporting on some steps in the right direction with
It's
a
true.
Biden's apology, with, acknowledgement of people who have been, traumatized and abused. We even had some more stories that, and there was one specifically about a trans woman who was abused in prison, but is actually getting justice. And, wanted to
Mhm.
report on that. So we're just going to have to save that for next time. But, I wanted to tell everybody, first off, Ember, you're great.
Why, thank you. One does one's best. I wasn't expecting that. I'm trying to get better at taking compliments and like the social interaction thing, but it's so foreign to me. I don't know what to do when people say nice things in my general direction.
Oh, well, you are. You're great. And I'm really glad that you decided to, to be my hostess for the mostest. So that's great. Thank you so much.
You're
But
very welcome.
guys, this is your 30 and 60. We're going to have to table some of the other things that we're going to have to do because we have to cut it short today to get in as much as we could as possible. But again, guys, if you have liked and enjoyed the broadcast, please like this video, share it on your social media platforms. Also, hit the bell to get notification every time that we go live and also when we upload a video. And also, if you want to support our content, please go to www.patreon.com/Skeptic Haven. Also, we do have other shows that we do on this channel. And if you want to go ahead and put it up, dear producer, we'd appreciate it. So make sure that you check out Mondays, Black Free Thinkers. I believe that's at 7:00. They have a special guest this evening. You don't want to check it. You're going to want to check it out. Thursdays, we have the Sunny Spot. Saturdays is the Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload. And don't forget, Let's Talk on Sunday. Plus, we have Your 30 and 60 will also actually, randomly pop up on Saturdays mostly. We also like to thank all of our patrons and everybody who are actually giving to the channel. Paul Kamish, Karen Butcher, Puck, Helen Green, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Ozols, Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. So guys, thank you. Woohoo! Thank you. I think that we got all through this. So, I know that a lot of us have a hard stop that we got to do. So we're going to stop this right now. Thank you again for tuning in, guys. This is Your 30 and 60. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Toodles.